As you've just seen, 17 days and counting to the August 8th polls. Good morning and welcome to Citizen Extra on this, the 21st day of July 2017, where we give you the latest news from the political front, current affairs, business and sports. My name is Wahiga Mwaura and Citizen Extra begins now. Coming up on this broadcast, we focus on the High Court, where a ruling is expected concerning the publication of guidelines on the complementary system of identifying voters and transmission of results should the integrated electoral system fail. We'll cross over to the High Court as soon as that ruling is about to take place. Meanwhile, preparations for the August 8th elections are firmly back on track after the Court of Appeal yesterday overturned the High Court judgment blocking Al Ghurair of Dubai from printing presidential ballot papers. NASA has decided to respect this ruling by the Court of Appeal and will not pursue the case further. We discussed that verdict with my panel in studio. Now, Acting Interior Cabinet Secretary Dr. Fred Matiang'i is expected to meet former South African President and leader of an AU Election Observer Group, Thabo Mbeki, at Harambee House for a briefing on security preparedness. We'll bring you updates from that press briefing as soon as we get them. And finally, a new study reveals that 90% of Kenyans have seen or heard false news about the 2017 general elections, with 87% reporting instances of deliberately false or fake news. We unpack those numbers, that's just a bit of that, what you can see on your screens, and look at their implications in the course of this broadcast. Well, we have an expert panel in studio. I'll be introducing them shortly. We are also live from different locations across the country. We're live in Uasin Gishu County and we're live in Kisumu County as well. We'll be taking their feedback there. John Wanyama live in Uasin Gishu and Laura Cheng live in Kisumu County. We'll be crossing over to them shortly to get their feedback on the ruling by the Court of Appeal yesterday. And in studio, I have my expert panel. As always, glad to have David Osiani, public policy expert. Welcome to the program. In addition, John Kagushia, lawyer and governance expert. Glad to have you here today.
Thank you. And
I'm told that Mark Vichati is on the way. I believe he's actually in studio, and we shall be chatting with him. No, just making a bit of a joke there. We'll be also bringing him into the conversation as well during the course of Citizen Extra. Well, let's cross over now immediately to Uasin Gishu County, Eldoret to be more specific. Now, preparations for the August 8th elections are firmly on track after the Court of Appeal yesterday overturned a High Court judgment blocking Al Ghurair of Dubai from printing presidential ballot papers. We want to get reactions from Kenyans from across the country, how they perceive that ruling by the Court of Appeal, and to give us reactions from Uasin Gishu County. We now cross over there. John Wanyama, good morning. And how did residents of Eldoret, Uasin Gishu County receive the news of the verdict by the Court of Appeal?
A very good morning, Maura, and here in Eldoret, residents have received this ruling with a lot of joy. They were worried maybe this election will not take place this year, but most of them yesterday, as we checked across all restaurants, the hotels were full and packed, as residents were following up on the event yesterday to see whether the court will rule in the favor of NASA or it will rule in favor of a Jubilee government. And they were very happy after the announcement that the company that was given the tender to print, it has been given a go-ahead to continue with the printing the papers. Maura, I would like just to speak to a few of them to get their views, how they feel about this ruling of the court. If I start with you, my first question to you, how do you feel about this ruling?
Actually, my name is Raymond Kepruta from Nandi County. We felt very happy after the ruling of the court, and we knew that the petition that was filed by NASA, by NASA Brigade, we knew that it will fail, and we knew that this ruling was welcomed well by the residents of Eldoret and North Rift at large, especially in Nandi County. And that is what we wanted actually, and we know that come 8 August, the North Rift, especially Nandi County, we are going to vote in Jubilee 101%. That is, we are happy, and we know everything is going to go on well, and we need peace in this country. Thank you so much, and we know we are going to win-win situation come 8 August, Jubilee 100%. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Kwa majina naitwa Francis Mbugua Mwangi, ni mkaaji wa Uasin Gishu. Nilikuwa na wasiwasi sana kuhusu tarehe 8 kwa uchaguzi, lakini sasa vile imekuwa namna hiyo, nimefurahi, sina mengi ya kusema. Thank you.
Thank you. The tallest man in Eldoret.
Yeah, well, the ruling does not affect the whatever NASA was advocating for, because one, we just wanted a process. I mean, whoever was going to print the papers was supposed to be a neutral person, not with any links with anybody. But all the same, if they are given, since they have been given the chance, we are not going to dispute. That is fine. Let the papers be printed, but come election day, biometric system should be used so that the credibility of the vote is safeguarded. That is basically what we are fighting for. But since they have gone ahead with the printing, that there should not be, there's no dispute about that now, and nobody was even saying we are going to, advocating for the elections to be postponed. These are just politics. The election is on 8th, and that's why that is stipulated in the constitution, and nobody wanted the date to be changed. So basically, the election will go on. What I would like to urge our people here is to maintain peace, because there are people who are just trying, when they have seen they are going to lose, they resort to warmongering, which is not necessary. Because last time, I remember 2013, the international media houses landed in Eldred, thinking that there was going to be there was going to be chaos, but there's nothing like that. So let's allow people to vote peacefully, and we get the results on during election day.
Thank you, Maura. My last person, what are your views and what was your word?
Kwa majina naitwa Boniface Opio. Hiyo amuzi ya jana haikuwa mbaya, isipokuwa inatakana tukielekea election tuwe na umoja na undugu, tusiwe watu wa hasira kupigana. Kitu ya pili, tunasema hiyo papers wakati wa print ile kulingana na ile kura watu wachukua, sije wapige mingi kupita kiwango. Ya tatu, nasema kura ikipigwa, kama mheshimiwa Raila atakuwa ameshinda, apewe kiti yake. Kama ni Uhuru, apewe kiti yake, isije kuwe mafurutano kwa wananchi. Asante baba.
Thank you very much, Maura. These are just views from residents here, and as you can hear from them, they are very happy. They are happy, Lord, and they are praying. The only thing they are praying for is now that let be there peace when we are heading to this general election, so that no one can be hurt. Back to you, Maura.
Well, thank you, John Wanyama, for that update. John Wanyama, they are reporting live from Eldred, Uasin Gishu County, just getting an opinion on the ground of how residents of Eldred received the news on the Court of Appeal ruling. They yesterday overturned a High Court judgment blocking Al Ghurair of Dubai from printing presidential ballot papers. Essentially, what this means is now plans for the August 8th elections are firmly on track. From Uasin Gishu County, we now cross over to Kisumu County, where Laura Achieng is on standby. Laura, will pose the same question to you as well. What was the reaction there from Kisumu residents when the Court of Appeal gave its ruling? And, of course, good morning as well.
Many thanks, Wahiga Maura, and a very good morning to you. And here in the county of Kisumu, the political temperatures are already rising, and forms and indicators towards the August 8th polls are already on. Actually, we had this week, it has been a week full of activities, especially for the ODM team, which has been panel beating around the county, trying to garner votes for themselves, all the way from the top candidate, which is Professor Peter Anyang' Nyong'o, who's eyeing the gubernatorial seat, down to the various MCAs in various regions. And of course, we saw them actually trying to put forth their agenda and trying to actually establish a race of numbers, trying to get the most out of the 529,000 registered voters here in the county of Kisumu. And also on matters IEBC, of course, we want to sample some of the people's opinions here concerning the ruling yesterday, where actually the Court of Appeal ruled that the Dubai-based firm Al Ghurair will proceed with the printing of the presidential ballot. And if I could maybe speak to this gentleman over here, sir, what are your opinions?
Well, we know people are not happy with the verdict of yesterday from the Court of Appeal, but all the same that there's nothing we can do, because that's a court ruling. After all, the buck stops with the IEBC. It is now them to conduct fair and credible election. Otherwise, there's no problem with that, because if election will be credible, then Kenyans will be just satisfied with the result of election. Yeah.
See, the Court of Appeal say that they found no link between President Kenyatta and the Dubai-based printing firm. So, what do you think of that?
That one we cannot say whether it is true or false. After all, we don't know whether they conducted investigation about it. If they did so, then they should prove to us. But if they didn't do that, we cannot prove whether they are saying the truth or the false. Because the people who brought that allegation might have known the truth than the courts. Yeah.
How prepared are you for the election?
election we are very much prepared. In fact, people are on the ground and they are ready to vote overwhelmingly. And this time, people want a change and they are expecting Jacom to take power in 2017. Yes.
Yes, Wahiga Mwaura, this is some of the opinions of the people here, but of course that is just one person. We will be walking around trying to bring you the latest from that front concerning matters preparedness of elections and also matters politics here in the county of Kisumu. Back to you, Wahiga.
Well, thank you so much, Laura Cheng, just for sampling at least the views of one resident of Kisumu County and just getting that feedback. We are talking about the August 8th polls and the ruling by the Court of Appeal. Let me now pose the same questions that some of our reporters across the country have been posing to residents, to my panel in studio. Let me introduce them one more time. Mark Bichachi, political analyst, also John Kagushia, lawyer and governance expert, and David Osiani, public policy expert. Let me start with you, Mark. Get your reactions from what happened yesterday, and what do you feel guided the ruling of the Court of Appeal even as they came up with that particular ruling?
I think for me the ruling makes sense in the sense of public interest, right? Because the nation was at a hairpin, thinking about whether this election would happen in time or not. And that's, I think, what guided the ruling of the appeal court, because they have to rule in public interest, but also as a matter of law, and they did keep to the law. So I think that's critical that we're going to have elections come August 8th. I think it's even more critical that NASA has finally agreed that they will not appeal this case any further, which paves the way for us to have our elections. So I think it's a good thing for our country.
Okay, for those of you watching us, wherever you're watching us from across the country and even around the world, talk to us. 22422 is our SMS line. You can also reach us on social media using the handle @CitizenTV Kenya. Let me bring in John for this, and to get a legal understanding of this, how will a ruling like what we saw yesterday set precedents for all public institutions in terms of compliance with public participation? Because I think across the country the big discussion has been public participation, its definition, and whether the Court of Appeal looked at it the way they should have yesterday.
First, even before we answer that, from what you're hearing from residents of Kisumu and Eldoret, where we have listened to, they all seem to say that they are very much prepared for an election. They are happy that judgment went that way, because then they will be able to conduct the election on 8th of August. So that's a good thing for our country, that we all want to have an election on 8th. And anything that then would stand on the way of us having that election is really not helping us as Kenyans. So I think that is one of the messages that we are getting. The other issue is that the issue of public participation, as it is enshrined in the Constitution, Article 10, subsection 2, it doesn't, the issue of public participation, as has been alluded there, has not been downgraded by the court ruling at all.
That's what you feel?
No, not at all.
Okay.
In fact, it has been upheld at a higher level, and the public participation will expect that it will be done. But you remember from our earlier arguments that we had here, one of the issues we raised is that if the public procurement law has been made through a participatory method or mode, and then it is the same law that then we are using to do procurement, that in itself has enshrined or has put inside the issue of public participation. You do not expect that, for example, University of Nairobi, they want to procure a bus, and now they open a desk at the front of the administration block, opening a public participation desk for that procurement. If that then were to be the case, we would have a very big problem with our procurement in this country. We would actually be taking the procurement or an administrative function from the procuring bodies into uncertain hands. Now, what has happened is that the High Court did not give a definite explanation or kind of a guidance on how that public participation was supposed to have been done, or how it was supposed to take place. And remember, one of the things that made us fault that High Court judgment was also the fact that it did not even give timelines, and it needed to give a ruling that tampered also with the public interest, because this is a very sensitive issue. The High Court found that there was enough and sufficient time to do this procurement within the law. But it is clear that we do not have enough time. If you look at the legal perspective, we do not have enough time. So it was questionable how then High Court would find that we have enough time to carry out this procurement and even involve the public in the participation.
Before I bring David into this discussion, for the benefit of our audience, how do you define public participation according to the law? As simple as possible, how would you define public participation from a legal perspective?
Public participation is whereby we are saying it's part of a good governance, and it is a requirement now by the law whenever we are making any policies. And if you look at Article 47 of the Constitution, it brings the issue of administrative justice. And everybody is supposed to come up with policies which encompass the public in them. And so long as those policies encompass the issue of interest of the public in them, and they are done in a way to consider the public interest, and they are done in a way that the public is involved, then those policies carry the day. They are the ones then that are used to do the procurement and any other administrative issues within the. It's true. Those are the policies that are then used to carry out any administrative activities within the body. Now, you do not expect that you leave it open such that every time you have to carry out an administrative function in a public body, you have to call the public. No, that's not how you perceive it, or that's not how you consider the issue of public participation. It is you make the laws, you make policies where the public is involved, and then when you are executing your duties in that public body, you use those laws that then, or those policies which encompass the public.
I have many questions, but I think some of the other panelists might capture some of them. David, go ahead.
I want to, first and foremost, Waiga, I am hopeful that towards the end of this year I will enroll in School of Law for my 3rd degree, because what Kagosha is saying is an attempt to explain things from his lens, which is a very biased lens. The obvious and simplest description, in my opinion, of public participation is the involvement of interested parties or stakeholders in any process.
Okay.
Let's make it that simple. All right? And so in the tendering process, public participation, because the ruling by the High Court in June that first threw out Al Ghurair was on the basis that they had single-sourced Al Ghurair as the printing firm. When the High Court ruled recently as regards public participation, it was therefore because the other interested parties in that tendering process were not involved. They had closed anyone's ability to interrogate, much less even try to get involved in securing the tender itself. So there was no participation. There would be no need for, there would be no way to get the country to be involved. Be that as may, Wahiga, I think the courts have done their job. The Court of Appeal, in my layman understanding, and I bet I read a little of law, deals with the issues of law in every case, all right? Unlike the High Court, which tries to look at other facts besides the law. And what they said in the Court of Appeal was that if the High Court found Al Ghurair able to do 5/6 of these ballot papers, then certainly they are able to do the remainder. However, the fact is that the interest in the printing of the ballot papers, of the presidential ballot papers, is not as easy, it's not as simple as printing papers for the gubernatorial positions and stuff like that. And of course, I want to trust that our judges were objective, because I am also aware that a number of them on that bench have in previous times been stated to be very, close to the state. One of them even attempting to be forced to be CJ at some point. But that does not matter. I bet and I pray that they were objective. That said, I want to believe that this then narrows any opportunity for IEBC to err. IEBC has no space to make an error after this ruling. Why? Because it will then look from February. They have wanted Al Ghurair when they had all the time. They did not open a bid for guys to tender. Then came and they still fought. Still, even after the High Court had said, can you engage a little more, they gave it to Al Ghurair. When the court said no for the presidential, they went to defend Al Ghurair. They may have a basis, because I bet Al Ghurair, by all standards, in my opinion, as a public policy person, I understand it's probably one of the greatest companies. But the linkage to the presidency,
the alleged,
the president has not denied. I want to make it clear, that the president has not denied that he was in a meeting in Dubai with the owner of Al Ghurair. But that's besides the point. IEBC will have a very narrow chance for any error should any error happen in this election, they will be seen to have been biased from the onset.
Okay.
But the ruling, that's the court. One time it goes your way, another time it doesn't go your way. And I want to just believe our courts will be as objective as they have been.
I saw Mark shaking his head as John was speaking. John, I'll come to you shortly. Mark, let's get your reaction.
Do you know the issue that John is cutting around is that as a country we've not actually in law enshrined what public participation is. There is no standard by which to measure what public participation is. And in my opening remarks, I said that the Court of Appeal has made a ruling in the interest of the public, not in terms of saying that there are certain pertinent issues that still need to be addressed. As a country, we need to enshrine public participation. There is no two ways about it. The second part is we need to be very, very clear that these elections were not a surprise. They were not a shock to anyone. Whereas we are pressed for time now, we were not pressed for time a year ago or 2 years ago. At any which point, by the way, we would have tendered for this particular contract. So the reality of the matter, there are certain issues that IEBC needs to deal with moving forward. Number one, IEBC has to make sure that this election is flawless. The onus is on them. But to say that if we put up a law, then by that law the public has participated, I think the good lawyer is being quite economic with the truth. Let me not say he's lying. Because the reality of the matter is this: as a country, we've not defined what public participation is, and the truth of the matter is, and even the Court of Appeal stated this, that public participation was not in this particular awarding of this contract. That is the truth. However, they made a ruling that is for the best of Kenya. Now, those two things are different. It does not mean that we do not now no longer need to have public participation. And to answer his question about the bus, if I was a campus student and I'm going to sit on that bus from here to coast, I want to say how that should be. Yes. That's the whole point of democracy. So we cannot willy-nilly choose between where we're going to have public participation or not. It's a public, if it's of public interest, then it has to have public participation. Even in my house, I have to ask my kid which toys he likes.
And you leave it at that. Let me read something before I give John a chance to respond. This is a snapshot of the ruling that was made yesterday, and I'll read verbatim. There is no constitutional or statutory mandatory requirement that there must be public participation before a decision to adopt or use direct procurement is made. Okay, so long as the procurement entity satisfies sections 103 and 104 of the Act 103 as read with Article 227(1) of the Constitution, direct procurement cannot be unconstitutional. However, the decision as to the winning bid and award of the contract is the sole responsibility of the procuring entity as the accounting entity. And for me, John, my question is, so does public participation really have any impact if the procuring entity at the end of the day has the mandate to go ahead as it pleases despite whatever form of public participation they may have used?
You know, it's interesting because the issue of public participation is not a choice, as my two colleagues rightly say, and indeed it's not. And I would like to correct something that both of them have raised on the issue of IEBC not having involved the public in particular on this procurement. You remember, this procurement was actually put in the open tendering, well, last year, you know, and how Al Ghurair was actually picked the first time, it was through open tendering. It was not through restricted, it was not through direct procurement. And when the interested parties went to court to stop the process, rather to have the process cancelled, it was not because it was a direct procurement. It was simply because it was considered that it was done at a time that commissioners had left office and new commissioners were coming in. And so the argument was that let us have the new commissioners then come and do a different or a clean procurement. And you remember, actually IEBC upheld that, and they went ahead to start the process afresh. And then another person again went to court and said you cannot start the process afresh because the other process which had been done was correctly done. The fact that commissioners were not in office doesn't really mean that it was not legally done. You know, those are some of the issues that were coming about. But then, in the interest of time, because you see, with these two court cases that went on, of course, the procurement, public procurement tribunal, with these processes that came, they also hindered, or they kind of delayed the whole process. And so by the now time that IEBC had new commissioners, they had taken office, and they were to do a fresh procurement process, it was not, we did not have sufficient time then to institute the whole process again. So this process has not begun this year. It has not even begun February, as my friend was
when the ruling was made.
The process had been done last year actually, and it had been completed in the right way. So, but now what has been in question in court really is not about those past procurement processes. It has been now the process that was done, which was done through direct procurement, and as IEBC would put it, they said they did that in the interest of time, because it was not then possible to go through the whole hog and still make it in good time. Now, the issue of public procurement is important, and I mean public participation is important. But as you can see from how it came out in the ruling yesterday, is that yes, we have set out laws that have input, it's like inbuilt. You get, it's inbuilt, because it's not every time you want to do a procurement. I think you need to understand my argument here when I talk about that you don't need to bring the public, especially when you're doing a procurement on the table at the institution every day, every time. It's because the kind of laws that we have made for our public procurement, they have inbuilt mechanisms to involve the public. For example, when you put out a tender in the newspaper, that is part of the public procurement, right?
Which is what was not done.
Yeah, which was not done.
Exactly.
When, again, you put, I mean, when you are doing the evaluations, when you are having the bidders to come and sign, I mean, that is part of the public procurement. I mean, all that is inbuilt, Then, we also have this other particular allowance or exception of a direct procurement, and that is what now the Court of Appeal referred to and said, in this case, when you have now direct procurement, it is in the law, it is already instituted in the law, and now we are looking at this in the context of also public good. We are looking at this in the context of having an election on 8th, because if you then say that go and do a normal procurement process, how long is it going to take? It's going to take well over 60 days. And if you are going to take 60 days and you only have 30 days or less than 30 days, it says that you're not going to have that election. That's where, I think that's where the worry was coming in, and that is why now everyone was up in arms and asking, really, are you interested in us having an election on 8th? And I think that is where the issue of High Court. Now, there's a way that the High Court would have made that ruling, by the way. There was still a possibility of making a ruling that would still have brought the issue of open tendering into place by looking at the law that's around the issue of public procurement, and by breaking it down and saying, yes, we know you're supposed to inform people, you're supposed to have 7 days for this particular, you can reduce them to 2 days, we know you're supposed to, but without having to give that kind of timeline, then they left it open to following the law that has already been put in place. And in that case, then we were not to make it to have an election on 8th. I think that is the issue.
You've introduced an interesting component, public good.
Yeah.
What happens when public participation affects public good, so to speak, whereas, and I don't know how to put this, but the feeling was that with very little time to the August 8th polls, carrying out what may have been a comprehensive public participation process may have affected public good if it affected the date of the election. I don't know if that's what you're trying to allude to, and I want to bring David in on this because he was countering you on this particular matter. And in addition, I want to define from a legal website what public participation is, just to see whether we'll be able to find a road we can all walk on together, because unfortunately in studio right now everyone is on their own path. Public participation, according to this organization, is defined as the process by which an organization consults with interested or affected individuals, organizations, and government entities before making a decision.
That's it.
Public participation is two-way communication, a collaborative process, problem-solving process with the goal of achieving better and more acceptable decisions. That's one definition.
And that is not.
I like the fact, Wahiga, that definition vindicates my statement earlier. And we must reduce this to the most elementary description or definition of public participation. All right, and we may not want to go on and on about it. Kagosha has a peculiar lawyerly ability to twist facts. He forgets that when this was open to the open bidding process, it is the fact that the IEBC at that point did not follow the very processes they had set out in the open tendering process. All right? That's why they were taken to court. And when taken to court, if I am not wrong, and I bet I am not, they said that no, we looked at those laws and realized they may have been defective. As such, we decided to land Al Ghurair as a direct bid. And that's besides the point. What I'm saying here, we move to the second level of public good, as you say. Yes, what determines public good? Perception. Perception. You have more than one half of the country who may end up perceiving that this was not just. And that is a story for another day. Perception. In China, the perception is if you've been sent to the killing squad because you're corrupt, that's very good. Here, it may not even be appreciated, even though I appreciate the China one. And so, perception is the issue. Perception would then, that's why I'm saying the perception will limit IEBC to making any errors, Maura. They cannot then come up, and that's why this ruling is very good. But even with this ruling done, today's ruling that we're waiting for, perception, when any error will occur, and errors happen. I don't want to be a madman. You know, processes, things fail, but they have limited themselves to nearly nil, no error at all in the coming election. Why? Because you have more than half of the country who, in their opinion, and from their very own lenses, look at IEBC as having been hell-bent from the onset to end up with this company as the one to do this tender. All right? That may not put, I'm not putting into question the credibility of Al Ghurair. That I may not put. But if the leading contender, one arm, all right, of this competition has said, we have questions. The agent locally is the brother to the president. The president had a private meeting with those people in Dubai, and all those things that bash the credibility of Al Ghurair. And then the High Court factoring in the issue of perception, Wahiga says that because the stakes are too high in the presidential election, let them print the others, but not the presidential. And then it ends up, just hold on, Kabusha. Then what we are saying is you will end up with a country, one side of the nation that perceives this to have not been right, even though it may be right. And I've repeated in this studio umpteen times that the law, in judging, in making judgments, the judges know that they must deliver justice, but they must also deliver what is seen to be just.
Okay. You know, David, sorry, for the benefit of our audience, I need to let you know that part of what David has said was part of NASA's cross appeal yesterday. It was thrown out, and they were told not to refer to newspaper articles. and just to make sure that everyone has all that information, let me now for an orderly debate, let me go to Mark now to get his view, and then John, I'm coming back to you.
You know, the issue of perception, and let me start by saying this ruling is good for the country. That's one. It's good for the country because we have a stable date upon which to have elections. However, that being said, we need to be very, very clear that we have an election where we have a 50-50 scenario in this country. And as an analyst, I'll tell you for free, whenever I make a statement, when I finish, I'm told, oh, now you're in this party. The next day, if I make a statement on the other side, I'm on the other party. Why? Because the perception in this country is the facts don't matter only if the facts only matter if they suit my particular party or my particular leaning. But the truth of the matter is this. Number one, yes, IEBC has made mistakes, and I don't think this ruling is sidelining these mistakes. It is simply saying that in the interest of time, direct procurement was the only option the IEBC had. Now, whether that is going to deal with the perception issue is a question that is up in the air. But the thing that I have said, and I said it yesterday and I'm repeating it today, that the onus is upon the IEBC to run a vigorous PR and communications campaign to create confidence in itself and in this process coming August 8th. They need to, for example, tell people, do a documentary, for crying out loud. See how many things of these things are being printed. Show them being transported, being loaded and being offloaded in the country. Get on air, say this is how many will be at a polling station. Create confidence. If they keep playing politics with politicians, they will lose, because unfortunately for them, our politicians have thousands of years of experience of twisting facts. But the IEBC needs to get its act together and communicate to Kenyans directly.
Kenyans themselves.
Yes, that's what they need to do.
Okay, John, you had wanted to come in on this debate?
Yeah, the issue of the connection between IEBC and the First Family, I think that really was propaganda. And it was put off by the High Court, not the Court of Appeal. If you remember...
Not IEBC.
Yeah, sure. Al Gore had a connection with the First Family. If you remember, what the High Court ruled is that they did not find any connection whatsoever, or NASA was not able to prove any connection between the First Family and Al Gore. And the kind of meetings and communication that had been cited, it was all hogwash, and it was actually put off by the High Court. Yesterday, what the Court of Appeal did was only to agree with the High Court that to the extent you found Al Gore not to be connected or not to have any linkage with the First Family, we agree with you. And now that is where the question was coming in, that the main allegation in the first and earlier ruling, the main prayers were that there was a connection between the First Family and Al Gore. And the decision then, when High Court found that there was no connection, it was then suspect that you could then go ahead to make a ruling that was not, in that line. So yesterday, the Court of Appeal only agreed. But having said that, I think, as we say, the ruling yesterday is not a favorable ruling to either NASA or Jubilee. It's just a ruling that is favorable and that is good for the country, because then it is going to lower the tension and the kind of anxiety that we have faced. And remember, Maura, one of the other rulings that had been made was the day before, on the issue of what Mainaki had taken to court, on the issue of electronic system. Again, he also wanted the High Court to find that IEBC had not followed the law by procuring the electronic system. And you remember the High Court again put off that and said, no, we find that IEBC has actually followed the law. So, you see, this kind of cases which seems to be putting blocks on us having an election on 8th are not adding value to our society. I would rather we look at cases whereby we want explanation and clarifications on particular issues maybe that IEBC has not been able to clear, but the ones that the court cases that we are seeing which look like they are blocking us having an election, that is what is bringing tension. But I'm happy because it seems like IEBC has all of a sudden started winning cases, especially which do not seem to be going in line with us having an election on 8th. And this week they have had 2 victories. I mean, today we are waiting for another ruling to be made, and hopefully it will be made in the interest of Kenyans in a way that is going to give a clear way forward for us to have an election, but not in a way to hinder us having an election. Remember some of the issues that have been raised, that let us cancel the election on 8th if 1, 2, 3 is not happening. I mean, what are we saying? Are we saying that you stop election in a place where people have gathered to vote and tell them, I'm sorry, you can't vote today, you have to go home and come another day? What are you waiting for in that case?
David, before you respond, I also want you to tell us that we can take this discussion forward rather than a back and forth. What guidelines do you think should drive public participation? Because the viewers at home are watching and wondering, okay, so if we can't agree here, what system can we put in place to ensure that moving forward we don't have to have this debate again?
I think that would be a very long one, Wahiga, because then you want to enlist who is an interested party, what is a stakeholder, to what extent are they stakeholders, are all the Kenyan stakeholders, for example, in an election, nearly everyone is a stakeholder. How then do you engage them? Is it by radio? Does IEBC have to take caravans around and ask opinion? How are we even able to verify that that's done? And that, it's a long and short, and that would be for our legal team. Kenya Law Review Commission and all the other arms that deal with the law should come up with what really that ought to be. And the second thing I want to correct what Kagosha has said. I don't know whether it is in his sitting room that he has said with his friends that let's push the election forward. I haven't heard. I mean, I haven't heard anyone, neither Uhuru nor Raila Odinga, even allude to the probability of pushing forward the elections. I bet both principals are hell-bent on having this election on the 8th, all right? And as regards taking cases, different people going to court to try, I mean, let's all go to court. Let's test the veracity of, let's go find out if you are in doubt. Because this election is a very important process. Go, ask the questions and find the answers. All right? If you perceive or think that this didn't go rightly, it's all right. But, Wahiga, the IEBC is going to hold the second most expensive election in the world after the US. Even comparatively, because we are smaller than even Texas, one state. If we were to be comparative in size, the most expensive, 44.9 billion shillings. There is no room for error, I will say.
Okay.
With all this gone, they have no room for error. So it's, the onus is on them, the ball's in their court, they have to just do whatever is able to be done. And I trust that they are competent to deliver a good election. And I am glad that our courts have handled these cases with such expediency. I can only pray that some of the cases that have been in the courts for years, like the Hustler's Jet and many other things, can also be dealt with such expediency, so that then we can move the country forward.
Okay. You know, Mark, because I want us to look at something else, but still on the same topic, I'm curious to hear from you. The clear message coming from Kenyans, you know, across the country is that they want the IEBC to deliver a near flawless process. But having looked at these court cases that the IEBC has been engaged in over the last 1 year, haven't some of their deliverables suffered? Because of constantly spending time. I'll give you an example. Are we satisfied with the electronic voter identification kits in terms of testing them in different locations, things like that? Wouldn't you say that as much as the court process has been helpful in ensuring that any who may have had grievances have had them sorted, at the same time this may have worked a little bit against IEBC's mandate in terms of delivery?
Absolutely, absolutely. You cannot spend a lot of time in court and expect to get a lot of work done. So yes, that has been detrimental to them, but at the same time, it's also been advantageous, because one of the things as a democracy we need to develop and understand is such proceedings are not adversarial. There is no winner other than the Kenyan people. That is what we need to understand. And the headlines keep saying that NASA has won, IEBC has won. No, can we get to the point where Kenya has won, that what we have now in framework is good for the country, not just for 2017 but for 2022, that we know what is supposed to happen in an electoral process. This is not an adversarial contest. It is not a place where we are saying so and so is bad and so is good. It is a question of law and what should be the established standards for this country. And therefore the IEBC, yes, has spent a lot of time in court, but that court process is also shielding it from any backlash after the election should they fail, because the same courts have approved their processes. So it's a doppelganger sort of situation where you've got two twins. One is good, the other one is bad. So they're both good and bad results of this particular thing. But the IEBC, to be honest with you, compared to the last election, which I was a presidential agent for, is more prepared than they were then. Do they still have to do a lot of things? Yes, they do. They need to do tests for these kids all over the country. They need to make sure that their staff are trained. They need to communicate better. There's so much the IEBC needs to do in 18 days, and thankfully
17
days. Wow. I've seen him yesterday. So there's so much that the IEBC needs to do, and they need to get it done as soon as yesterday.
Well, can I just put in a word, you know, to imagine that IEBC has been slowed down because of the court cases is everything far from the truth. All right, we are in that case making an assumption that the entire IEBC acts in the courts. IEBC has a competent legal department whose mandate is to deal with cases as and when they come up. They can go and litigate and go to the courts and do that. But IEBC also has a technical arm. All right, it's the technical arm. It's not the legal department that should be testing our kids. All right, so the technical arm should be doing its job. Nothing stops them while the cases are in court. I have not seen any point where it said, as we handle these cases, can you halt everything? So should IEBC not be able to verify some of these things, to test their kits, then the failure will not be because they were taken to court by different parties.
You feel they have no excuse?
They have no excuse whatsoever. The person to blame will be their technical team, all right? Because I know they have competent staff. I bet they're able to deliver. So let them not hide behind that.
Okay.
I hope we are able to do, let's test them and assure Kenyans, as Mark had said earlier, tell Kenyans why they need to have confidence in you.
Okay.
Their confidence has been battered over the last few days, sometimes wrongly, sometimes rightly. But when it's all said and done, it's upon them to tell Kenyans, you know what, this might have been said, but that's not the position. We are going to deliver a credible election, and I trust that they have the ability to.
Okay, John, same question to you. A lot of time in court for IEBC. Do you think that they've lost on other crucial areas because of that?
No, I actually agree. They should not have lost any time in that, because then they should be dealing with the cases in the court, just like the way NASA is dealing with the cases in court. You know, NASA is very busy campaigning, but they have one arm which is totally dedicated to the winning cases in court. Never mind, they seem to have lost several now.
No, lost one yesterday
and the other day. Now the issue here is that IEBC has a responsibility to deliver a credible election, and I think that has been clear. That the issue of having a credible election is not in question. We as Kenyans, we are not just asking, we are actually demanding that they must deliver a credible election for all the people to be happy about the results. But can we in Kenya achieve that happiness? Can we satisfy the side that loses? You know, we say in Africa that elections are never lost, they are stolen. And that remains as a very big question. I think what IEBC has been losing in this process rather is not the time to implement other issues, is more of the public confidence. And I think that has been a deliberate move also by some of the political players to, you know, just poke holes into IEBC and then make people not have so much confidence in them, and so that then it lays a basis for, you know, issues later on when election comes out. And I dare say, like in this case, we have had NASA at the top of their voices saying this election is not going to be fair. If for some reason they win this election, even after having said all along that the election was not to be fair, they are the first people who will defend IEBC. And then you'd see Jubilee on the other side saying, no, there's something that happened in Arusha, there's something that happened in Dar es Salaam, there's some, you know, that is likely to be, that would be the scenario in that case. And in this case again, NASA has been saying this election is not going to be fair. And if they lose at the end of the day, you will see them again say, we said it. In fact, even those ballot papers that were printed there, we had already seen and we had already said. So we are looking at a case whereby whatever the outcome of these results come 8th, whatever the outcome of this election, we will still have dissatisfied you know, voices. And
I guess that is why the onus is really on the IEBC to ensure that the process, from a perception perspective, is truly credible.
That is it. And they have not so far done very well in terms of coming out clearly. I keep saying we only know 2 commissioners. We only know Chebukati and maybe Kwamboka, the ones who
yes, that's right.
Yeah, but the other commissioners, I think because they are not the operators, we have the people who are, we have the secretariat. They also need to come out clearly and take time to explain to Kenyans on different platforms on what is it that they are doing. And they need to be a little bit more robust in terms of engaging Kenyans in advertising and really clearing the air on different issues. And that way then they are going to build more confidence. But again, I also want to point out that from the interviews we have also seen on the ground, Kenyans seem to kind of be happy about the outcome of this whole ruling, that it is going to give us a clearer, is giving us a clearer way forward now. And I think it has really brought down tensions in the country.
Well, I'm pretty sure whatever IEBC commissioners are, that they are watching this, or at least they're getting those messages from a cross-section of Kenyans. Let me quickly read you some of the SMSs that you're sending us on 22422. And this is Kennedy from Nairobi. He says, hello, Citizen Extra. To be fair to the IEBC, a year ago, instead of having public participation, we were asking for personnel change. So he says that he feels that they have not had time. Fred Embu echoes the same sentiments. IEBC came very late to be. How then do you expect them to be perfect? Another person here, you don't give us your name, but you say, should elections only take a day? I believe that's enshrined in the Constitution, but that's maybe a good discussion to have moving forward about whether we should split the process, maybe have the presidential elections on a different day to see whether that could make the whole process easier. And one other person, you don't give us your name, but you say, we well know that in the past IEBC has failed us. So we still hold the fear of trust with this one as well. Well, those are some of your views on 22422. I'll be checking what's happening on Twitter a bit later on. But for now, we take a short break. When Citizen Extra returns, we've got so much more lined up. We'll be crossing over to the High Court, where a ruling concerning the publication of guidelines on the complementary system of identifying voters and transmission of results is expected to take place any time now. In addition, we'll be talking about Monday's presidential debate and fake news as well. What do you believe anymore and what do you not believe? Our body carried out a poll and we'll have the results coming up on Citizen Extra.